We're talking about Iran under pressure, feeling the squeeze on the outside of sanctions. We're going to talk about that as well. And also of dissent from within. We're going to broach that in a moment. With us to talk about it all from Tel Aviv, political scientist Meir Javan-Dafar of MIPAS. From Los Angeles, Mohammed Sahimi of U.S. Public Broadcasting System, PBS news site, TehranBureau.com. Ali Fatemi, who teaches at the American Graduate School here in Paris. And Ruzbeh Parsi of the European Institute for Security Studies. On camera, on the streets of Tehran, what you find this Tuesday when it comes to the standoff with the West over the Strait of Hormuz, over the sanctions, a mix of pride and wariness.
Iran's youth will not allow any foreigners to violate the borders of Iran. The US is no exception.
If we were to go to war with the US, we would have to give our money. We'd have to give up our lives. We'd have to hand over our refineries, like Iraq.
Because the US is a bully, and it really is a bully, it has to be punished, but it should not be up to us. We don't think that's a logical course of action.
Mohammed Sahimi, what's your reaction listening to those voices? Obviously, those people speaking on camera there in Tehran.
Well, we cannot really be sure about that type of reaction because obviously anybody who speaks on camera is aware that those films and those reports will be monitored by Iran Ministry of Intelligence. But the fact is that the economy in terrible shape, inflation is high, unemployment is high, and tension with the United States has led to the devaluation of Iran's currency. And if the sanctions of the Iran central bank actually proceeds, that would create chaos in Iran's economy. But there's also something that people have to pay attention. Part of the devaluation of Iranian currency is done actually by the government of Mahmoud Ahmadinejad because the Majlis elections are in 2 months, and the government intends to spend vast sums of money to buy votes for smaller towns and villages. So what they do is they manipulate the rate of exchange between Iran and
Mohammed Sahimi, the line is breaking up once again, but from what I understood what you said, that part of the devaluation we're seeing, you're saying, is so that the Iranian government can print money to spend it on buying votes, is what you're saying. Ordinary Iranians, by the way, feeling the pinch with the currency dropping 40% in the past month. We can perhaps show a graph that shows this Tuesday, by the way, it did rebound 9% from the previous day's record low. Now, this is the official rate, official figures. On the open market, the Iranian currency is trading at 16,200 to the dollar. The commerce minister, by the way, quoted as saying that the central bank has been asked to inject more foreign currency into the market. Still, authorities deny that they're feeling the squeeze.
This issue has nothing to do with the sanctions which have already been announced but have yet to be implemented. Basically, the United States and England have announced they will put sanctions on Iran's central bank when they already had no banking interaction with us.
Ali Fatemi, explain to us that what's in that bill that Barack Obama signed that's making the currency drop.
Before that, let me just say one thing. This election is a sham, like all other elections they had. 24 years of this regime, 8 years of Mr. Rafsanjani, 8 years of Khatami, these are totally blocked out. Today, this election is not going. Everybody has actually said they're going to boycott the election. So government said talking about boycott is illegal. So please let's not talk about elections. This is like Saddam Hussein's kind of elections. Now, the bill that was passed. Basically, I think it is not going to be operational. First of all, because it gives the president 6 months to consult with other countries to prepare the process. There is no precedent of a central bank being boycotted in economic history. The only organizations.
But it does slap sanctions on lending institutions that deal with the Iranian central bank.
No, that has been going on for a long time. But when you say boycotting the central bank, sanctioning the central bank, only organization that can do that is the Bank for International Settlements in Basel, and they are not about to do that. So what will happen basically is European banks or American banks are not going to deal directly with central bank. So everything will go through China, everything will go through Russia with 10 to 15% surcharge. It is not going to be what everybody thinks. I think this whole idea of sanctions have been misdirected. You put sanctions on a country where it has democratic government. So people with pressure, put pressure on the government changes its attitude and its policies. This government has nothing to do with Iranian people. So Iranian people have been suffering under sanctions for no good.
Meyer Javandafar, do you agree that these sanctions will have no effect?
I think it's difficult to say, but I think I would, as a whole, I would say that they could have an effect. I don't think any government around the world could ignore such restrictions. I think that the new sanctions imposed by the United States against anybody who does business with the Iranian central bank, with regards to oil especially, is something that the government of Iran cannot ignore. Why? Because anybody who wants to buy or sell oil to Iran, buy oil from Iran has to go through that bank, so now they won't be able to do that. Iran is expecting to earn somewhere between $100 to $110 billion this year from oil. According to a recent report from the Associated Press, that provides up to 80% of government income. If that starts to take a hit, I think it's impossible for the Iranian Supreme Leader, Ayatollah Khamenei, not to take notice from that. And I think, but there's another thing that we have to also watch out for. We have to see what the reaction of the people is. People, observers of Iran, including myself, have always been worried that if we go too hard, then we might push the people to the side of the government. Let's see. I mean, the rial has been crashing for the last 2 days. I think it's an open secret that it's because of the government's handling of the nuclear file and the recent threats. Let's see if the people blame the West for it or blame President Ahmadinejad. Let's see if there's going to be a massive shift in support for President Ahmadinejad and Ayatollah Khamenei, or people are just going to stand on the sideline and basically blame the government for doing this.
So are you saying that in effect these sanctions could be a good? Are you saying in effect these sanctions could be a good thing?
I think in terms of, first of all, we don't want war. I think in terms of avoiding war and in terms of bringing the Iranian government back to the negotiation table with a serious compromise, I think they could be, and I emphasize the word could.
Ruzbeh Parsi.
Well, first, I think these sanctions, insofar that they have an effect, is basically just to formalize a relationship that already exists. If a Chinese company has to choose between two markets, the US market and the Iranian market, they will obviously choose the US market. And they do that already just because of the deterrent effect of something like this could happen to them. So in that sense, you're just formalizing an unequal relationship within the world economic system, if you will. So in that sense, I agree with you. And I also agree with you in that sanctions in general only work if you have some kind of democratic system, because that's the way you can build pressure from below. I would, however, not agree with you that elections in Iran in general just are a sham. I think there's a nuance to be had in the sense that, for instance, when Khatami was elected, that was a surprise to just about everyone. So they're not free and fair in the fullest sense, but they're not just totally predictable either. That has some. Now, regarding whether sanctions is a way of avoiding a war, I think that has often been an argument made, and I doubt that very, very much. Because you see, the point here is that this is not the first time we sanction Iran. We've been sanctioning them for a very long time. And every time they say, let's have another round of sanctions that will be even better than the last one. And at some point, the credibility of the idea of sanctions instead of war is going to run out. And then those who actually do want a war will be able to say, look, we tried everything you had. The only option left on this proverbial table is a war.
Also remember, this is the worst time from an economic point of view for Europe, for the whole world, to go for sanctions. But something very funny happened the other day. I don't know if you noticed it or not. Europeans said, yes, we are going to sanction Iranian oil. Italy said, yes. But first let us sell $2 billion more oil to buy from Iran, and then we'll follow it. I mean, they all have to face their own electorate. They all want to get re-elected. And I think the first priority of politicians is to get re-elected. Therefore, the problem basically is that if sanctions doesn't work, unfortunately, we have two alternatives. One is to live with an Iranian bomb, which some people are already trying to brainwash others that it can be done, so we have a second North Korea. Or the second one is a war, or some sort of aggression. I don't know, it could be aerial bombardment, I don't know.
But let's get back to what you were saying about the domestic situation a moment ago. And by the way, we should tell you that we did invite the Iranian embassy to join us, the Iranian ambassador. No, they declined our invitation. But I want to get back to what you were saying, and also to what Meir Javan Nafar was saying about what's going to happen next. And if you turn back the clock to 2009, we saw Tehran suddenly erupting amid anger over President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad's re-election. Those cries of fraud sparked an unprecedented outcry that caught lots of people by surprise. I remember Ruzbeh Parsi, when we were having debates about this 2 years ago, basically every week we were called off. We were predicting what was going to happen next, and we were getting it wrong. One of the things that's also happened in this context is we're a year into the Arab Spring, and there hasn't been an act two to that so-called Green Revolution. Why is that?
Well, I think we have to remember, of course, that dissent and discontent in Iran has always been there. And it reached unprecedented levels with the elections in 2009. So it's just because they're not on the street doesn't mean that it doesn't exist. But they have not been able to organize themselves and come up with a unifying message that brings everyone on board for one single end goal, so to speak. And you can say paradoxically the reason for that is that there has been nuances within the system. That's why people don't agree on how far they want to go.
I think brutal repression should not be forgotten.
Of course.
I mean, Iranians are not teaching the Syrians how to kill people. Basically, what they did is they went out, they have hired the hoodlums, they gave them uniform and weapons, and they shoot to kill. And basically, they cannot do this all along. I think during this election, you are going to see demonstrations. And the fight is actually between Ahmadinejad and Khamenei. Everybody else is staying out of this whole election game.
Mohammad Sahimi, in 2009, it was the Green Revolution in Iran that wrote the book, really, on a social network-fueled uprising. I know that you follow this closely. You monitor what goes on in Iran closely. Are you getting signs that something is happening ahead of those legislative elections in March?
In terms of the Green movement, no. Aside from the fact that the reforms and other groups that strive for democracy have basically boycotted the Majlis election, I don't see anything at the societal level to protest the sham election that is coming up. But let me just point out one thing that Dr. Fox is not paying attention to. The election of Majlis are sham elections. There's no question about it. They're show elections. But this is significant. That in that election, the two factions within the government, the faction led by Ahmadinejad, the faction led by Ayatollah Khamenei, are going at each other's throat. So in the long run, weakening of both factions within the government.
All right, Mohammad Sahimi, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but you're breaking up once again. Apologies for the technical issues.
Can I just come in here for a second, please?
Meir, go ahead.
In terms of the sanctions, just a quick point, and also about the elections, 2 quick points. With regards to sanctions working, the West has an ally in terms of making sure that the sanctions hurt the Iranian regime, especially as much as possible, and that ally is the concept of Ahmadinejad-economics. Basically, the economic concepts of President Ahmadinejad, his politics, have been so disastrous that I don't think the regime can use the impact of the sanctions to discredit the position of the West, because President Ahmadinejad himself has been such a walking disaster for Iran's economy. And in terms of the elections, Francois, if you're looking for a threat, let's listen to what the Minister of Intelligence, Mr. Haidar Moslehi, said in Iran. The threats he mentioned were pro-American reformists, which majority of the leadership is now in prison or at home under guard. House arrest. Or the supporters of President Ahmadinejad. He's basically sitting, President Ahmadinejad is basically on the, President Ahmadinejad is seen as a threat by the Minister of Intelligence, who had a falling out with him. And when the Minister of Intelligence in Iran warns about the people, the deviants as they call them, the supporters of Ahmadinejad being a threat. You can see where the concerns of the regime is now. It's within, it's not Mr. Karoubi or Mousavi who are under house arrest, it's people who are supporting Ahmadinejad, and they're not going to sit down and take the disqualifications which could be coming their way, because it's very possible that the Guardian Council could disqualify them, especially President Ahmadinejad's sister Parvin, who said she wants to run. Can you imagine if she's disqualified? So the threats within for the next elections, I think, is not so much from the reformist camp. I think the government has basically locked them away, and there is, as Rouzbeh said, there's a crisis in leadership. But there is President Ahmadinejad himself. He is considered as a threat for the upcoming Majlis elections.
And we know that rivalry between Ayatollah Khamenei and President Ahmadinejad has gone very public. Here's what Yasmin Alem in the Dubai-based newspaper The National writes. While the president's camp pulls the strings of the Ministry of Interior, which is in charge of conducting the elections, the Supreme Leaders Group controls the omnipotent Guardian Council that vets candidates and certifies the election results. So we have the rivalry here between the president and the supreme leader, and all those dissidents who are going to boycott. What's going to happen in March?
That's a very good question. But I mean, in a sense, what you can say is that you're getting to a point of diminishing returns every time they are forcing someone out of the circle of being inside the elite. So what has happened since 2009 is that the Conservatives have found out that the only thing they agree on, besides being conservative in general, is that they don't like the reformists. On everything else, they disagree. So we are at the point where the Speaker of Parliament is trying to do the bidding of the Supreme Leader vis-à-vis the President, who then has his own allies within Parliament. And so everyone is trying to position themselves, not because these elections in themselves necessarily will change much, but they will be a harbinger of what is to come with the next presidential elections, which will be in 2013.
And if it's a big boycott?
Well, they will, the Islamic Republic has had voter turnout from 50% upwards, and I think they would be happy with 50%. The question is, where is that 50% going to go?
Okay, we'll have to leave it there. I want to thank you, Rouzbeh.
François,
very briefly, one word, because we're out of time.
Can I make one point?
Sure.
These Majlis elections are very important and cannot be ignored, because Ayatollah Khamenei has said that it is possible that the position of the president could be removed altogether, and that the Majlis would choose a prime minister. So the next Majlis elections are actually crucial for the regime and cannot be ignored.
All right, Maher Javandafar, I want to thank you. Ali Fatemi, I want to thank you. And Mohammed Sahimi in Los Angeles. Thank you for being with us here in the France 24 debate.
Relive all the big news stories of the year with our interactive map. The Arab Spring, Osama bin Laden's death, the Fukushima disaster, the Strauss-Kahn case, the debt crisis in Europe, the trial of Ivory Coast Laurent Gbagbo, the floods in Australia and Thailand. The year 2011 in review, a joint France 24, RFI, MCD production. Don't miss it, it's on France24.com.
Watch France 24 live and free on your mobile phone. Anywhere in the world, on almost any cell phone, whatever your provider. Watch France 24 live and in 3 languages. France 24 on your mobile phone. Just visit our website, France24.com, and click on mobile. Select your phone brand, enter your phone number, and you'll receive a free SMS telling you how to install our player. You can watch France 24 live and get the latest world news for free on your mobile.
Is the Fifth Republic turning into France, Inc.? In the next Beyond Business, we look at how the French state is cashing in on its properties and even Sorbonne University. How far should governments go to make a buck?
Don't miss Beyond Business, Saturday 10:15 a.m. Paris time on France 24.